Hi there, in this video I am going to talk about the newly announced Laowa 10mm ultra wide angle f2.8. I think that is the first f2.8 10mm out there, and it has autofocus. It's the 10-year anniversary lens from Laowa. I know them already for quite a long time, and I asked them, hey guys, can I try out this lens because it looks quite interesting? And they said, sure Albert, here's one. So I have it a few weeks now. And I've been trying it out recently in Iceland, so I'm going to show you some pictures here on my laptop. But before we do that, let's take a quick look at the design of this lens. So it's very minimalistic, it's quite small, very strong build. It looks like full aluminum, not that heavy, 450 grams. When I first opened this lens cap, the lens element here, the front element, is quite small actually. It's like a sphere, partly quite small. Yeah, nice design. Only one switch, the autofocus manual switch. So no custom buttons, nothing. Just one big ring that turns infinitely that you can use for manual focus basically. But yeah, again, this lens is autofocus. That's the first Sony FE autofocus lens from Laowa, I think. Actually, and I can tell you the autofocus works very well, very fast and very silent also. You don't hear it at all, so that's nice. Yeah, very minimalistic design. One thing more, this little lens hood, you can attach it and detach it. Very small, and you might think, well, that's kind of useless, but it's actually not, because if you attach it and you drop the lens, it often falls on the lens hood and it protects the lens and your camera. I had an old Laowa lens fall one time, the 15.2.0, yeah, 15.2.0, and it has a similar lens hood and it actually fell on the hood. The hood broke, but the rest of the lens and the camera were totally fine. So it's mainly for protection, I would say. Then there's a filter thread, 77mm, so you can actually attach filters. But I can tell you, even attaching a circular polarizer, which I tried, 77mm, you immediately get vignetting because this lens is so super wide. It has a 130 degrees angle of view. Anything you attach to it will immediately give you vignetting, just so you know. So, talking about specifications, here is the box. Very nice written specifications all on the box. So we see first it's full frame, just to confirm, full frame 10mm f2.8. That's quite extraordinary. And well, 130 degrees, 15 elements in 9 group, aperture blades, just 5 aperture blades, not that much. And the minimum focus distance, 12 centimeter, only 12 centimeter. That's almost nothing. So you can get very close to your subject, which can give you very creative photos and also can be very nice for wide angle focus stacking. 12 centimeter. That's almost nothing. Then the 77 filter thread and the weight 450 gram. It's indeed not that heavy. 450 gram, quite small, so easy to put in the bag and not super heavy for the lens what it is, 10mm f2.8. So here we have the website of the lens in front of us, Laowa 10mm f2.8 0D. The 0D stands for zero distortion. They have a line for that, so these lenses are known for having not much distortion or almost zero, as they like to call it. Here it says 420 gram. On the box it says 450 gram. So I'm not sure what it is. I have to put it on the scale. But yeah, not that heavy. $800 pre-order price. Not that expensive. Laowa is kind of known for that, for not making super expensive gear and with very decent quality. When we scroll down, we see a bunch of properties here, some example shots, very nice shots actually, 130 degrees angle of view, a comparison with a 15mm, 12mm, 10mm, and I can tell you indeed 10mm is extremely wide. So I actually made an article about that, shooting with the 10mm, because I had used the 10-18 Laowa back in the days as well. Definitely check that out if you want to read some tips on how to shoot with such a super wide angle, because if you attach it for the very first time on your camera, you're going to be like, wow, that's super wide. What am I going to do with this? How am I going to use it? But once you get a hang of it, you can get super creative with this kind of lens. So let's talk a little bit more about the properties, the things you probably want to know as a landscape photographer when you are going to use this lens. And the first thing is obviously the sharpness, right? So let me show you some of my own shots that I took in the last few weeks in Iceland. So when I spent the last few weeks in Iceland for guiding a tour and also some days for myself, the winter conditions were excellent. A lot of snow, very beautiful conditions, beautiful light, not so much wind, so very comfortable for Icelandic standards in winter. If you have been there in winter, you know how it can be. Of course, we had sometimes these crazy winds, but most of all, it was very comfortable. So here I was at the Black Church, the famous Black Church in Iceland, and you see fully covered in snow with a super dark sky. And this is what this lens really shines for. Epic skies, you can frame just so much sky with this lens because it's so super wide. So here I have this beautiful white foreground and with some little vegetation here and this spectacular stormy sky. So when we zoom in, we can see actually the lens. This is shot at f11, so just a normal aperture. From the tripod you see 10.6 millimeter. That's actually not true, that's just an old firmware. I have been told by Laowa it's a really 10 millimeter. And you can see the sharpness is very decent in the center, in the corners as well, at an aperture here at f11. Very normal stuff actually, but just to confirm, I'm shooting here on my A7R5, which is a 60 megapixel, and this is a already processed image. So when we look at a almost not edited shot, we can see if we are shooting snow scenes, the vignetting even at f11 here is quite strong. You see, this is a snow scene. Now normally it's not that big of a deal, but if you're shooting a lot of bright stuff, you can definitely see quite some vignetting here, but this is without any lens profile applied, and I have been told by Laowa that they're gonna release the lens profile very soon that fixes this vignetting. So if we zoom in here, we can also see there is a little bit of chromatic aberration. You see here some purple edge and some green edge on the contrasty areas here. This, if you zoom in a lot, you will see it, and it happens. Especially this one is so super wide. It happens, quite occasionally. But if you turn on remove chromatic aberration in Lightroom, these edges are actually immediately gone. Okay, so this fixes it very easy. So just make sure you do that when you're using this lens. So here we are shooting at f14. Look at this extremely wide angle view of Londorangar in Iceland. People that have been there know how it normally looks. Super wide, again, a beautiful sky. Sharpness is good across the frame. If we look here to the right, we can see here also this, we see a little bit of distortion, of course, on the edges. But in general, the sharpness here in most of the frame is very decent, okay? So the sharpness is good, I would say, especially I am using my A7R5 high megapixel camera. In the center is good, on the edges maybe slightly less, but it's still good, I would say, on normal apertures. So this lens mainly for extreme wide angle shots. I like it, it's not for everyone. But if we look, for example, at this kind of shot, Vesterhorn in Iceland, for the people that have been there, you know, it's difficult to frame with it like a 60mm, and this is at 10mm. I can frame the whole mountain, I can frame a foreground, I can frame the beautiful sky, and this is a great example of a perfect usage for this lens. I have this spectacular snow patterns in the foreground that I can frame all of them with the amazing sky, which would be very difficult for any kind of other lens. And again here we can see sharpness very good in the foreground on the mountain, and that all looks good. Now, like I mentioned, the close focus distance 12 centimeter, that's super close. So What about focus stacking with this lens on wide angle shots? So let me show you an example of focus stacking. Here I was in a, well, you can call it a tiny cave. It was a tiny area, and I found these beautiful icicles by the Kvernufos waterfall in Iceland. I had never seen so much of these beautiful icicles on this waterfall. So I kind of squeezed myself in this little area here and set up the 10mm lens on the tripod. And this is the result, the framing the waterfall through the icicles. I really like this, how this came out. And I used focus stacking in this photo. So this lens does have a little bit of focus breathing, but it's not that much. I would say it's normal focus breathing. So let me show you how this was set up. Here we have the frames on the laptop. So here is focused on the closest icicle, and in the end is focused on the waterfall. And this is done with the automated focus bracketing on the A7R5. So I focused on the closest icicle and then let it run to focus to infinity. And the focus stacking, the focus bracketing on the A7R5 works flawlessly with this lens. So that was nice to see. So if we look, like these are the shots that the camera took, and you see indeed slightly a little bit of different focal length. That is called the focus breathing between those shots. So especially look on the edges. So you definitely lose some resolution. And then here is the processed image actually. I really like how that came out with all the icicles and the waterfall in the middle. So that's a focus bracketed, focus stacked shot. Yeah, so works very well with this lens. I just overlaid the frames in Photoshop, and actually let me just put a video in the description on how to do that. I have a video out for that, so if you want to do that, definitely check out that video. Okay, some other things. Sunstar. Okay, so only 5 aperture blades. So the Sunstar is not like millions of points. It has a decent Sunstar, I would say. Here I was shooting into the sun, so here you can see the little Sunstar. So the Sunstar, it's not super sharp, but it looks nice, especially on some lights and on the sun. Here it's not even framed against an edge, but you get an idea of how that looks. Here I was standing behind the Kvernufos waterfall, and look at this beautiful angle of view, 10mm with all the icicles on the top and even a foreground. So yeah, this is another great use case of how to use this lens. And here I have another frame with a person standing here, again standing from behind the waterfall, 10mm vertical with a beautiful light coming in here. Foreground, icicles, just a very spectacular, super wide angle view. Yeah. Okay, so let's continue with some other points. Of course, you're wondering, okay, 10mm f2.8, that should be nice for nightscapes, right? Yes, this lens is definitely also made for that. Here I was shooting the Aurora at the Bruarfoss waterfall at about 5 in the morning. And you see the 10mm angle. Actually, I cut the sides here. It was wider, but the 10mm angle allowed me to frame so much sky, so much Aurora, and so much of the waterfall as well. So for this amazing skies, also Milky Ways and Auroras, this lens is definitely useful. You can frame so much stuff, right? But let's look a little bit about the performance, on the stars. So if we look at the center of the frame here at f2.8, we see is sharp. The stars are also sharp. But if we look at the edges, we see there is definitely aberrations on the stars, especially on the outer corners. Definitely see these aberrations that you will see at the 100% crop, right? It's kind of a trade-off for shooting 10mm. That's a 10mm f2.8. So of course, I wouldn't expect that it's perfect in the corners with the stars. So definitely some aberrations and also some coma. This is already a processed shot. So let's look at a different photo with stars. This one is not processed. Well, I made it slightly lighter and applied some noise reduction. It's actually shot at ISO 12,800. I wanted to shoot the Aurora here, but it didn't really come out. As you can see, there was only a green glow, but a beautiful Milky Way and super clear sky, and a really nice, really nice frame. Like you can frame so big, you can get the big part of the Milky Way here. And a beautiful foreground. This was my friend Vincenzo standing here and lighting the Glacier Lagoon here. Not much post-processing here. And if we look at the center here, the stars are sharp. Again, 12,800 ISO. I did apply some noise reduction here. But yeah, these stars are sharp, but again here on the edges you can see to start the aberrations. Yeah. So yeah, that's a little trade-off for shooting 10mm, these aberrations. But yeah, if you want to shoot everything in one frame and really wide, this lens is great for that. It's also the distortions. When we look at all these photos and we look at the horizons, for example, they call it 0D, right? So there's not much distortion. If we look at this horizon, yeah, I would say there's almost no distortion. It's very straight. And we can see that in all of the photos. So even though it's 10mm, not much distortion, so it's going to be great for big panoramas as well. So yeah, if you have that aberrations in the corners, you can also shoot a big panorama and kind of get rid of these aberrations and still shoot a big panorama of the night sky quite fast. So I can imagine that it's going to be quite nice for that, to shoot very fast, big night sky panoramas. So not much distortion is very nice. So I hope I covered most of the points that you were interested in when watching this video. If you have any questions, definitely put them in the comments. You're probably going to ask me, am I going to use this lens a lot in the field? I have a lot of choices. As you know, I'm a Sony ambassador. My favorite wide angle used to be the 12-24 2.8. Lately, I've been using the new 16-35 GM2 a lot because it's much lighter. But I did notice that I kind of missed this ultra wide angle view. So I'm gonna probably bring the 12-24 GM more and more again. This lens is very good to bring next to the 16-35 GM2 because it's relatively light. So it's nice to put in your bag. So I can definitely see this as an extra with your Trinity kit. If your widest lens is a 16-35, this lens for some extreme cases and very creative cases is great. It's not that expensive, build quality is good, decent results for night skies, not much distortion, great for panoramas. It definitely has a lot of positive things to it. So I do think a lot of people are gonna consider buying this. So thank you so much, Laowa, for again releasing something very interesting that was not on the market before. We all know Laowa for their great macro lenses, for their probe, for their always innovative wide angle lenses. This one of them. Congratulations for your 10-year anniversary, Laowa, and thank you so much for letting me try this lens, and congratulations again. Thanks everyone for watching. Put your questions in the comments. If you like the video, consider subscribing to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next one.